Hello and welcome back. I'm glad you're watching again today. I have another video about the papal transition process, the Interregnum, happening right now in Rome. As I'm recording this, it is Wednesday morning, May the 7th. It's about 8:45 in the morning here in Arkansas, so we're 45 minutes away from the cardinals entering the Sistine Chapel and being sealed in with the kind of the big extra omnes that everyone else call by the master of ceremonies. So things are getting exciting in terms of looking forward to who the next pope might be, and that makes me think back to my own time in Rome 20 years ago. I mentioned at the beginning of this series of videos that part of what I wanted to do with this was to have an opportunity to kind of reminisce, to talk about what it was like to be in Rome with the papal transition that happened in 2005. And I've mentioned little parts of that here and there, but really, this video is going to focus very specifically on that because I want to give you an idea of again, the feeling there in Rome when a new pope is elected. Because by the time this video uploads, it'll be Thursday. It's possible that, if things go quickly, it's possible we already have a new pope by that point. Now, good chance maybe not yet, because that still could be Thursday late in the day our time, or at least midday our time. Could certainly be Friday. Would not surprise anybody if it's Friday. And of course, it could well go on longer than any of that. We just don't know. But at any rate, we're glad to be able to watch the events from a distance and to be able to see in real time now what's happening. Think about you think about the really old days. You would have had to wait a while to know, but now, of course, we can know just as soon as it happens. Assuming we're awake, of course, right? There's a good chance that the successful election will occur while we're all asleep early in the morning. But again, going back to my own experience back in 2005 when Pope Benedict XVI was elected, I had thought at that conclave, it was going to go longer than it ended up going, partly because John Paul II had been Pope for 26 and a half years. And when he was elected, it was on it was the third day, I believe, something like the 8th ballot. And that was only 2 months after John Paul I had been elected. So I thought, gosh, if these cardinals who already knew each other, who had already been doing this conclave thing a couple months before, if it took them a few days in that context, how long is it going to take him 26 and a half years later when only like 3 or 4 of the cardinals that were there in 2005, only 3 or 4 of them had been in a previous conclave? And so I wasn't really ready the day that Benedict was elected. It was the second day of the conclave, the first full day, because the first day is really more of a half day. That's what we're going to have on Wednesday, May 7th, this time around. But the conclave in 2005 started on Monday, and it finished Tuesday. And I was in my room at the seminary. I had gone to class earlier in the day. I had some friends who had just been hanging out in the square. They wanted to see every puff of smoke that went up from the chimney. And again, I was kind of trying to time things, as it were. And so in the afternoon, when the smoke ultimately went up, again, I was sitting in my room at the seminary. It was about 6 in the afternoon. And part of why I can remember that is I remember hearing bells ringing. And 6 o'clock is a common time to hear some bells ringing because the Angelus prayer, that's traditionally 6 in the morning, 12 noon, and 6 in the afternoon. And so it was not unusual maybe in Rome to hear bells at 6 p.m. But I thought, you know what? I need to be more attentive to what's going on. Let me turn on my radio to see that I can stay up to date on what's happening. Well, I turned on my radio. The first words I heard in Italian, fumata bianca non confermata, literally white smoke, unconfirmed. Well, at that point, I ran, and I had, some things ready. I had a windbreaker. This was mid-April, so it was just a little chilly by that point in the day, not uncomfortable by any means, but a little more comfortable with the windbreaker. I had in my pockets a pair of binoculars, because I thought maybe I'm going to be far away and need to look and see up close who's coming out on the balcony there. I had my camera, because we didn't have the phones, at least I didn't yet have a phone that had a camera in it. So I had a separate digital camera. And I had a little FM radio with headphones because I thought, once I get to the square, I want to maybe listen again on the radio to see what's going on, see if they give updates about timing or anything like that. So I ran to the square. Now, the Pontifical North American College, where I was, the seminary there, is probably on a normal day a little more than a 10-minute walk to get from the seminary to St. Peter's Square. Maybe 15 at most, but it's in that 10 to 15 range when I would go most of the time. Well, this time, again, I'm running the whole way. I bet I got there in about 5 or something. It was certainly the fastest I ever went from my room to St. Peter's Square. And when I got there, there were several people in the square already, right? People had been hanging around all day waiting for every puff of smoke that would go up. I got there, and I saw the last few bits of white smoke coming out of the chimney still. And the bells, I think, were still ringing. Those bells had been going for a while. And so then I'm about halfway back in St. Peter's Square. If you think about, how the big plaza opens up, and if you consider from the basilica all the way to the very back, about halfway. And so it was not a bad spot to see things. Well, there was, it didn't seem like the whole city of Rome showed up in St. Peter's Square. The place was packed eventually. People kept coming in, filling in behind me. Every little bit of space that was available got filled in. And we waited and we waited. And it was a good 45 minutes from the time I got to the square to the time we saw who was Pope. And they have the Cardinal Protodeacon comes out on first, and he says, "Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum." I announce to you a great joy. Habemus papam. We have a pope. And everyone cheers. A great excitement. Then there's this kind of longer formula, and of course it's kind of dramatic to draw it out with the longer formula, right? It's like, and it's all in Latin. It's like. His Eminence, a member of the College of Cardinals, and mentions a couple of other things, and then finally gets to the first name, and he says it in Latin, and of course it was Joseph Ratzinger who was elected, so he says Josephum. And after he says the name, then he's got, he's a cardinal and a few other little things that get titles and whatnot that get thrown in, and then finally says the last name, Ratzinger. So there's that little bit of break in there. When he first said Josephum, I thought, oh my gosh. Is it Ratzinger? Is it Joseph Ratzinger? Because I'd read a lot of Ratzinger and knew who he was and thought he would make a great pope. I didn't, going into the conclave of 2005, I did not think he would get elected, partly because of his age, partly because, some people thought he had more of a hardline reputation or whatever. And so, at any rate, but I was very excited that he got elected. And again, there's a great enthusiasm in the square, a great rejoicing. There was one reporter commented to me later that she said she thought it felt like the home team had won. And in some ways, I think that's true. And I think that's true no matter who will be elected. You'll have that same sense of excitement, that same sense of euphoria and celebration in the St. Peter's Square, and then more broadly throughout Rome and throughout the Catholic world. But, it's kind of this thing. You can watch a football game or a basketball game or whatever on TV, but to go in person is a whole different experience. And so we're going to rejoice with the Pope elected, but yeah, it was kind of a different experience to be there in person and to have that kind of rejoicing and excitement. And that's part of what's motivated me throughout these last few weeks to keep doing these videos, is to talk about the process, but also to talk about my own experience with things. It's, the Pope Benedict, he's out there now. He's, we're told Joseph Ratzinger is the Pope. And then part of the formula that the Cardinal Protodeacon continues saying, qui sibi nomen imposuit, who imposes upon himself the name, Benedictum. So Benedict XVI was the name, of course, that he took. And so Pope Benedict gave a brief address to the world, he said, after the great long pontificate of John Paul II, the cardinals have chosen me, a simple and humble worker in the vineyard of the Lord. And I don't really remember the rest of it. It was not a long speech, just a couple of minutes that he spoke, and gave everyone a blessing. It's one of the official Urbi et Orbi blessings that the Pope gives on Christmas and on Easter, and again, just after he's presented to the world. And so I stayed around in the square there for a while. I don't remember how long exactly, but again, I'd run into some friends there, other seminarians, as well as lay students that I knew from some of the pontifical universities, and again, it was a great celebratory atmosphere. And when I got back to the seminary, it felt like a kind of a party atmosphere there as well. But between St. Peter's Square and walking back, which again, I went much slower going back to the seminary than I had going to the square, I was impressed that the Vatican newspaper, L'Osservatore Romano, had already, see if I can get this centered right, had already printed an edition. So this says on here 7:10 p.m., and it's got, Pope Benedict XVI there on the balcony. Now, of course, newspapers were a bigger thing 20 years ago than they are now, but I'm guessing this may still happen. The L'Osservatore Romano, the Vatican newspaper, may have an edition out, right away after a new pope is elected. And of course, that won't be the only way this thing gets announced. It won't even be the primary way. But I'm hoping it's there, and I'm hoping people that are in Rome, pick that up to have their own keepsake. I was looking through a box today. I saved a good number of odds and ends from that time. And so I'm glad I have that paper. I was looking through it. There aren't really any significant articles in there. You can tell like they had this all ready to go. They have some articles about the papacy in general and just some other kind of general filler, if you will. So they have Benedict's picture on the front. On the back, they have a picture of the white smoke and the chimney. And in the middle, information that could have been used for anyone that had been elected. So anyway, that's where I'll stop it for today. Again, I thank you for watching. And I will have another video tomorrow, and we'll see kind of where things go from there. I may get a few more out, but at the very least, I can say this is not my last one. But again, thank you for watching. Please like and share, and let everyone know. Certainly you can subscribe to this YouTube feed and everything as well to be updated for future videos. But in the meantime, again, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Happy Easter.